Have you ever been at a dinner party or maybe just stuck in a corner at some networking event and you're listening to two people talk and you get this weird sinking feeling that there's a second conversation happening just above your head?
Oh, absolutely. The meta conversation.
Right. I don't mean they're whispering, and I'm not talking about big academic words like, epistemology or whatever. They're speaking normal English, but they're smiling at references you don't catch, or they'll nod at a phrase that seems totally throwaway to you. But to them, it clearly carries just all this weight. It's like they're speaking a language of reference and symbol that you haven't learned yet.
It's a deeply human experience, that. It's that visceral sense of being on the outside of a context. And, our first instinct is usually defensive. We feel excluded.
Exactly. My brain instantly goes to, okay, what are they hiding? Are they making fun of me? But today we are doing a deep dive into a stack of sources that suggest something. Well, something completely different. We're looking at a collection of articles, some heavy research on what they call narrative architecture, the evolution of cultural identity, and this is the curveball, a structural theory about the biblical story of Cain and Abel.
It is quite the eclectic stack today.
Yeah.
And the mission is really to challenge that instinct of suspicion you just mentioned. The central thesis we're exploring is pretty radical. It asks, what if secrecy in ancient texts isn't about hiding information at all? What if it's actually about interpretive capacity?
Interpretive capacity. Okay, I want to unpack that phrase before we go any further, because when I see ancient texts and secrecy in the same sentence, my brain goes straight to, the History Channel at 2 a.m.
Right.
I'm thinking conspiracy theories, hidden treasure maps, secret societies and robes, but these sources seem to be arguing for something. Well, I guess you'd call it cognitive engineering.
That is a perfect term for it. The argument here is that we often make the mistake of looking at ancient stories as if they are just literal history dates, battles, genealogies, who begat whom. But the research proposes that they were actually designed as symbolic architecture. They were built to train the mind.
Train the mind to do what, though? To memorize facts?
No, to perceive depth, to
yeah.
see patterns, to realize that a story can mean one thing on the surface, the literal plot, but carry a completely different, coherent structural meaning underneath. And here's the kicker. If you don't have the training, the interpretive capacity, you literally cannot see the secret. Not because it's locked in a vault, but because it's invisible to your current level of perception.
It's like the Magic Eye poster. The spaceship is right there in the dots, but if you don't know how to relax your eyes,
You just see static.
you just see static.
Precisely. And the secret isn't kept from you by malice. It's kept from you by your own inability to focus correctly.
Okay, that's a cool concept. But this is where the research takes a hard left turn into some pretty specific theology. The sources use one of the most famous stories in history to demonstrate this. Cain and Abel. Now, I went to Sunday school, so I know the basics. Two brothers.
One's a shepherd, one's a farmer.
Right. The farmer gets jealous, hits the brother with a rock. First murder. It's usually read as a moral story about envy, right? Or just a literal history of the first crime.
Right. And that is the surface reading. But the symbolic hypothesis in our source material just flips that completely on its head. It suggests we stop looking at it as a crime scene and start looking at it as an allegory for human cognition.
And this all hinges on a wordplay that, I have to be honest, I struggled with at first. The name Abel.
Yes, this is central to the theory. The source introduces a specific linguistic play, treating Abel essentially as a homophone for the English word able, A-B-L-E.
Okay, stop right there. I have to play the skeptic here for a second. This is a Hebrew text, thousands of years old. Moses, or whoever wrote this down, wasn't speaking modern English. How can we base a massive theory on an English pun? Isn't that just a coincidence?
It's a valid objection, a really good one. And to be clear, the research acknowledges the linguistic gap. They aren't saying the ancient author was making an English pun. They're arguing for something called structural resonance. The idea is that the character of Abel functions in the story exactly as the concept of capacity or ability. The fact that the English name Abel sounds like Abel is a linguistic artifact that helps us, specifically English speakers, unlock the function. It's kind of a happy accident of language that reveals the deeper structure.
So we're using the pun as a tool to understand the character's, job description?
Exactly. In this framework, Abel isn't just a guy with some sheep. He represents a specific human faculty. He represents interpretive capacity.
So Abel is the part of us that is able to see meaning?
Yes. Abel represents the human ability to perceive layered, relational, or, spiritual meaning within the world. It's the faculty that detects coherence beneath the surface. It's the part of your brain that understands poetry or metaphor or the interconnectedness of things, the meaning maker.
Okay, I can roll with that for a minute. So, if Abel is meaning or depth, what is Cain? Because Cain is the bad guy in the story.
Well, in this structural reading, Cain isn't evil in the cartoon sense. Cain represents instrumental or material systems. Cain is the tiller of the ground. He builds the first city. He represents the mindset that prioritizes control, construction, literalism,
Yeah.
data. Cain deals with what is right in front of him, the surface.
So Cain is an engineer or a bureaucrat.
Cain is the part of us that asks, does this work? Can I measure it? Can I eat it? It's a necessary part of survival. We need Cain to build houses and grow corn, but the problem arises in the relationship between the two.
Right, because the story says Cain rose up and killed Abel. So in this cognitive version, that's not just a guy getting hit with a rock.
No, it's a structural allegory. It's describing a psychological event that happens in civilizations and in our own heads. It's saying that when the instrumental system, the desire for control, logic, and literalism, becomes too dominant, it suppresses or kills the interpretive capacity.
Wait, that actually hits home. It's describing how we lose the ability to see deep meaning because we become obsessed with surface control.
Exactly. When you demand that everything must be scientifically proven, literally true, and materially useful, you kill Abel. You kill the ability to perceive the poetic or the spiritual.
That is wild. It takes a story about a biological death and turns it into a story about, well, about us getting stupider, spiritually speaking.
Or getting flattened.
Yeah.
The research even connects this to those ancient conquest narratives, stories where one culture wipes out another, like the destruction of the Canaanites. The argument is that these aren't just ethnographic claims about wars. They symbolize epistemic shifts.
Epistemic shifts. That's
Yeah.
a $10 word. Break that down.
It just means a change in how we know what we know. It's a way of saying a system of literal, rigid control came in and wiped out a culture that operated on symbolic, relational knowledge. The conquest is the conquest of one way of thinking over another.
So the dead brother isn't a corpse. The dead brother is a dormant part of our own cognition. We're walking around with a dead Abel in our heads because Cain is running the show.
That is the heavy implication, yes.
This leads us directly to the next big question I had while reading this. If this was all about thinking deeper, preserving this ability to see meaning, why did these groups get so associated with secrecy? Why do we think of them as mystics hiding in the shadows? Because if you have this great way of looking at the world, this Abel ability, why not just tweet it out? Why the cloak and dagger?
That's the million-dollar question. The sources break this down sociologically. And it really comes down to a misunderstanding between an internal view and an external one.
Okay, so how did they view themselves? Did they think they were wizards?
Not at all. If you look at the Hebrew textual tradition mentioned in the articles, they didn't see themselves as hiding things. They viewed themselves as custodians. They had a covenant. Their job was preservation, duty, continuity. They were protecting a way of reading and understanding the world so it wouldn't be lost to the Cain mentality.
So internally, it feels like I am a librarian of sacred things. I'm not hiding the book. I'm making sure the pages don't rot.
Precisely. But now switch perspectives.
Yeah.
Think about how that looks from the outside. If you are an outsider, someone operating purely in the Cain mindset, and you see a group of people poring over texts, speaking in ways you don't understand, guarding their traditions, you don't see custodians. You see conspirators.
You see a secret club.
You see esoteric mysticism.
A secret club that thinks they're better than you.
Right. And that creates what the research calls interpretive asymmetry.
Interpretive asymmetry. It sounds like something from a physics lecture. Is that just a fancy way of saying we aren't on the same page?
It's a bit deeper than just disagreeing. It's when one group is using layered speech, words that carry a literal meaning and a symbolic meaning at the same time, and the listener only hears the literal one.
Give me an example of how that feels in real life, because I feel like I experience this with my teenager sometimes.
That's actually a decent parallel. But imagine someone speaking in code, but the code is just. Poetry you don't get. If I say something that is a deep, resonant, structural truth, and you only hear the surface words, you might feel like I'm being vague or maybe even deceptive. You feel excluded. The source argues that secrecy is a function of interpretive asymmetry. It's not that I'm hiding the meaning from you, it's that you don't have the lens to see it yet.
So mysticism isn't magic, it's just Literacy.
Basically, yes. The source defines mysticism as participatory interpretation. It's simply meaning that is encountered through disciplined reading. It's not a superpower, it's a skill. Like reading music. To me, sheet music looks like random dots. To a musician, it's a symphony. The composer isn't keeping the song a secret from me. I just haven't learned the language.
I love that idea, but it's still a bit abstract. I want to ground this for the listener. The sources provided a really unexpected analogy to explain how a story can be true at different levels without being a lie. And I have to say, of all the things I expected to discuss today, Santa Claus was not on the list.
The Santa Claus analogy is brilliant because it's something we've almost all experienced. It perfectly illustrates this concept of developmental scaffolding.
Okay, walk us through the layers, because we all know the lie of Santa Claus. We tell kids a fat man comes down the chimney with an impossibly large sack of toys.
The research argues we shouldn't view it as a binary lie versus truth. Look at the levels of perception. Level 1 is the child. To the child, Santa is a literal, magical figure. He delivers gifts. But functionally, think about what this story does. It organizes the child's world. It organizes wonder. It organizes behavior, be good for goodness sake. And it creates a sense of anticipation. It is true to the child's experience of the world.
Okay, fair enough. It's a functional reality for a 5-year-old. But then they turn 8 or 9, they find the wrapping paper in the closet, and the bubble bursts.
That's level 2. The adult, or let's call it the Cain stage. The figure resolves into concrete reality. You realize there is no magic man. It's your parents. It's human labor. It's them working extra hours to buy those gifts. It's a transaction.
So the magic is replaced by reality. And usually, this is where we stop. We become cynics. We say, Santa's a lie, grow up.
Right. We get stuck in the material facts. But the source posits a level 3, the spiritually grounded. At this level, you realize that the parents weren't just lying. The giving reflects participation in a larger moral or sacred order. Generosity, sacrifice, the joy of giving without needing credit. The spirit of Christmas isn't a ghost. It's a behavioral reality.
So when a parent plays Santa, they aren't lying. They are embodying an archetype of generosity.
Exactly. Now, here is the key connection back to our main topic. Did the story change? No. The story of Santa stayed exactly the same. The perceiver matured. A mechanic or cynic might call the Santa story deception because facts were withheld from the child. But a holistic view sees it as dimensional communication.
I like that phrase the source used. The structure simply unfolds into the level of reality a person is able to perceive.
That is the core takeaway. The story is a scaffold. You use the literal story to hold the child's attention until they are mature enough to understand the abstract concept of generosity. Ancient myths work the same way. They aren't lies used to control people. They are developmental scaffolding meant to grow with the reader.
So if you're reading an ancient text and it sounds crazy or impossible, like a guy living inside a whale or the world being created in 6 days, maybe you're just reading it at level 1.
Or you're stuck at level 2, criticizing the biology of whale digestion and missing the level 3 truth about redemption and hitting rock bottom.
That makes so much sense. But I want to go back to something you touched on earlier, the English pun thing, Abel and Abel. Because the sources make a claim here that I found honestly a little hard to swallow. They imply that language itself isn't just random noise we invented to ask for food. They imply that language is engineered.
It is a controversial take for sure. The section on language engineering suggests we rethink how languages evolve. We tend to think language is just random mutation, natural selection of sounds.
Right, we grunt. Eventually the grunts become words, and here we are.
These texts argue that languages, especially liturgical or sacred languages, are codified and shaped over centuries by these custodians we talked about. They suggest that features like homophones aren't accidents.
So when sun in the sky sounds like son of a father, that's not just lazy pronunciation.
A skeptic would say it's coincidence. But the source suggests that in these high-context traditions, homophones are retained or even cultivated because they allow for simultaneous semantic layering.
Simultaneous semantic layering. There's another $10 phrase.
It just means you can say one sound, and it triggers 2 or 3 different meanings in the brain at once. It connects concepts. Able connects to ability. It allows you to speak to the novice and the master in the same sentence. The novice hears the name, the master hears the function.
So it's about the ability to hear the architecture.
Yes, and this is crucial. The sources emphasize that this interpretive lineage, this ability to hear the deep structure, isn't about having special DNA or magic blood. It is about cognitive training.
It's a workout for your brain. You have to go to the gym for your able muscle.
If you are trained to hear the operator-level structure of language, you perceive depth. If you aren't trained, you only hear the surface semantics. What we call mysticism is often just the rediscovery of this interpretive cognition, is remembering how to listen.
It makes me wonder how much I'm missing in daily conversation, just letting words bounce off the surface because I'm too busy looking at my phone.
We all do it. We live in a very Cain world, very literal, very fast, very information heavy. We strip mine language for data. We don't usually sit with it to hear the resonance.
This leads us to the final and honestly the most philosophical concept in these sources. It's a phrase that stopped me in my tracks. Developmental opacity.
It is a beautiful concept. It reframes the whole idea of hidden knowledge.
Because usually when we say something is hidden, we imagine someone took it and locked it in a box. They are keeping it from us. It feels adversarial.
Right. But developmental opacity argues that secrets are not locked away. They are simply ahead.
Ahead. That's a strange way to put it.
Think about the poetic analogies the source used. Adulthood is secret to a child, not because adults are hiding it. Adults are living it right in front of them. But the child simply hasn't lived enough to comprehend it. The experience of paying a mortgage or falling in love is opaque to a 6-year-old.
Or like how wisdom is secret to the novice.
Exactly. Or how age is secret to youth. You cannot explain the feeling of being 80 years old to a 20-year-old. You can use words, you can show them pictures, but the meaning is opaque until you get there. The secrecy describes the distance between what one mind can register and what another has already integrated.
So when these ancient traditions guard secrets, they aren't hoarding them, they're just waiting for us.
They are guarding maturation pathways. Imagine trying to explain the nuance of heartbreak or deep grief to a toddler. You can't. If you try to force that knowledge on them before they are ready, it distorts the meaning. It might even damage them. You have to wait. You have to let them grow.
So guarding the secret is actually an act of care. It's parenting.
It is. It's protecting the learner from knowledge they can't carry yet.
That is a profound shift in perspective. And this circles us all the way back to Cain and Abel. Because if Abel is this capacity for meaning, this ability to see the deep structure, and Cain is the force that buries it.
Then the hope of the story is that Abel isn't gone forever. The source says Abel isn't destroyed permanently. He is hidden or buried, waiting for the perceiver to develop the faculties to find him again.
He's waiting for us to grow up, to move from the child through the cynic to the spiritually grounded.
In a sense, yes. He is waiting for us to move past the literal, past the need for absolute control, and redevelop the capacity for wonder and connection.
So let's synthesize this. We started with a dinner party awkwardness, went through a murder mystery, stopped by the North Pole, and ended up with a lesson on cognitive development.
We covered some ground. We went from conspiracy theories to cognitive science. We learned that secrecy is often just a mismatch in how we listen. We learned that stories like Santa Claus and Cain and Abel are scaffolds to help us climb higher.
And the big takeaway for me is that meaning isn't a thing you find. It's not an object you pick up off the ground.
No. Meaning is not something you possess. It is something you practice. It is a way of engaging with the world. You have to cultivate the Abel in your own mind.
And that leads to the challenge the sources leave us with. We live in a world that is very good at being Cain. We have unlimited data. We have incredible control over our environment. We can Google anything. But are we taking the time to cultivate Abel?
Are we seeing the pattern beneath the noise? That is the question. In a world of surface information, depth becomes the ultimate secret.
So the next time you hear a story, whether it's on the news, from a friend, or an old myth you haven't thought about since you were a kid, I want you to pause. Don't just ask, is this true? In the literal sense. Don't be Cain with his rock, trying to smash it open for facts. Ask yourself, what layer am I listening to? And what might be waiting for me if I learn to listen a little deeper?
Because the secret isn't hidden, it's just waiting for you to be able to see it.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
My pleasure.